Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wife there, who is actually running the pharmacy right now while I'm doing this podcast. So kudos to her, and she will be back on the show later this week. So I am super excited to have Dr. Greg Dennis on our show. I met him through some social media platform, can't remember which one, but it was intriguing because he is actually a doctor that helps people get well instead of just prescribing drugs to make patients sicker. And for those of you that follow Janet and I on social media or our podcast, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you know that we are two pharmacists that don't believe in drugs to treat most chronic disease. Most chronic disease is related to your lifestyle, sleep, diet, and exercise. So Dr. Dennis, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your story and your journey and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I love telling this story. So I'm a family practice physician and went to osteopathic medical school, and then went to a very good residency in Wichita, Kansas, where we were trained to do a little bit of everything. Practice inpatient medicine, do scopes, deliver babies, even C-sections, and very well-rounded residency that had both DOs and MDs, and really some of the best training that one could ever ask for in primary care or family practice. And so felt very blessed in my training there. So left there and came back to my home state of Oklahoma, where I started as a regular family practice doctor in what I would consider corporate medicine. And I did that for many, many years. And I built over the years a very large practice. I had a panel of almost 4,000 patients with me and a PA. I was very successful, making good money, and I was doing all the things that you're supposed to do as a family practice doctor. And I was checking all the boxes, and I was practicing what I considered at the time, quote, evidence-based medicine. And I even remember telling some of my patients that they would come in, and if they mentioned things outside the box, I was one of those doctors that would just say, look, I practice evidence-based medicine. So
yeah, boy,
get your snake oil out of here. I didn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking.
Right.
And so I was, again, checking all the boxes in that, if we did certain things, if your A1Cs averaged, a certain level, or, all your cholesterol is averaged a certain level, you got kind of bonuses. And so I'm putting people on cholesterol medicine, and I'm treating their blood sugar, and I'm giving them medicine, left and right. And I'm doing all the things, and I'm, seeing a whole lot of patients, they're in and out the door, and seeing 25, 30 people. And so I was successful, and at some point in all that, and I don't really know why, I look back now, I'm like, maybe it was a God thing. I don't know. But I just kind of took a pause one day, and I thought, my patients aren't getting any better.
Nope.
And I had this huge panel to look at, and I had by this point years of clinical experience. And I thought, I'm checking all the boxes, I'm doing all the things, but they're still sick. So they're still dying of heart attacks or having heart attacks. They're still having strokes. Again, I had a huge panel, so this was over the years I was able to see this. They're overweight. Their joints hurt. They're on a sack full of medications. They're not well, even though on paper they look good,
Right. Their cholesterol's under control.
By God, their cholesterol's good. Yes. But they're not well, and I thought they're miserable people, and they're not living their best life. Now, I've always been into fitness myself, but never was really taught to kind of take that and use that to practice medicine, as a way to practice medicine. I mean, as I'm sure medicine and westernized medicine is just about giving drugs,
pretty much,
which I'm sure we'll talk about. Yeah, yeah. So I just started questioning things, and now on this end, I'm actually surprised that more doctors don't do that because I mean the proof's in the pudding. I mean, what they're doing obviously doesn't work, and I don't know why more doctors don't just be like, this kind of sucks. It doesn't really do much. But fortunately, I feel like I had the veil lifted from my eyes, and I was like, surely there's a better way. And so I went just kind of on this deep journey, and I started just kind of opening a few doors and learning about, hey, how do I really get patients well? And then that led to a bunch more, a lot of other rabbit holes. And I ended up for I don't know, several year period, I was consumed by this. I was reading everything I could get my hands on, just soaking it all in because I was like, man, and the more I did all that, the more I learned that, what really why the way we were doing it wasn't working. But then I also learned a lot of the things I was taught weren't correct. And I thought, well, if this is wrong, this was always like, like dogma. I mean, nobody questioned it, I mean, but so if that's wrong, what else is wrong? And so I just started going down all these rabbit holes, and eventually just, kind of learning what it really meant to get somebody well, and that's not just throwing them on medication. And I'm not anti-medicine, but it certainly shouldn't be the first option. And it really came to a head when I was still in corporate medicine and had a guy come in with really bad type 2 diabetes. Matter of fact, his A1C was like 14. And,
Holy smokes.
yeah. And he was very resistant to get on medicine. Now, normally a patient coming in with that, type of A1C, I mean, I would have thrown the kitchen sink at him. I would have put him on, a bunch of medication, probably would have started him on insulin. And he was very resistant. And I said, look, here's what I've been learning. And you can do this, 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 and this. And he's like, I'll do it. And I was like, okay. So I let this guy walk out the door with an A1C of 14 without it, without any medication. And I was kind of worried about it. I said, all right, you got to come back in 3 months. And if this isn't drastically improved, you're going to be on a whole lot of medication. He said, okay. Well, he left. He came back in 4 months, not 3 months, but 4 months. He did everything I had asked him to do, which was, an extreme low carb diet. He was fasting, exercise. I mean, he tried to worked on building muscle to help with his metabolic health. I mean, like he did all the stuff.
Wow.
So he came back in 4 months. We rechecked labs. His diabetes was gone. Like not only his A1C was, and I used to have a picture of it for years and years. I had a picture of it. His A1C went from 14 something to 4. It was 4 point something. His insulin level was normal. C-peptide normal, like everything, all his labs were completely normal. I just was looking at it like, why didn't anybody teach me this in medical school?
I know.
And I was like, well, I guess you're cured. Come back if you need me. He's like, all right, cool. So it was at that point I thought, there's some better ways to do things. And there's some of these things actually work. And so from that point on, it was really, I tell people when I was, still in corporate medicine, it was like wearing a shoe that didn't fit. I wasn't a good fit for that style of practice anymore. And so I started looking at some other options, and I eventually joined another physician in a direct primary care style practice, which is what I do now. And that's where people pay a monthly membership fee, and you have a lot less patients, and you have a lot more, that you can be seen as often as you want. You can spend as much time as you want with patients. And so I was with another clinic for a few years. And then just in this last year, I branched off and opened my own clinic where I'm now 100% owner. And that's FitRx Health and Wellness. And I'm still in the business of hopefully trying to get people well. And that's through a lot of things I'm sure we'll talk about, but it's proper nutrition and exercise and weight loss and hormone optimization and all the stuff. So kind of a long story, but that's really the summary of my medical career and what got me to where I am today.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. At first, so my wife and I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and we have a similar story, but actually it ended tragically, and that's what made us change our practice, was because we had a patient that was morbidly obese that was basically dying, and on her deathbed, she called Janet and thanked her for her service, and basically told Janet that she ate herself to death. And this gal, Dr. Dennis, typical of somebody like that, 20-minute different medications that we were giving her. And we realized that we did her no favors. We were just enabling her bad habits. And ultimately, if we could educate people on how to be healthy, that's what's really going to change their lives, not some magic medication. And, once you've learned that and you look back, and I think you're there, you can't believe some of the things that we were taught and that we believed. And just kind of like that guy walking in, has a hemoglobin A1C of 14. You were surprised when he came back and his hemoglobin A1C was normal. But now we know that is possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know it. And any other way of doing it is wrong. We've got all these magic drugs to lower blood glucose, but if ultimately you don't fix what's causing the glucose to be high, we got all these magic drugs that'll help you pee out the glucose. That's not fixing the problem.
Yep.
The problem with that guy was mostly dietary, and he wasn't moving. So why can't we fix the diet to fix his diabetes? That's really the only way to do it.
Yep. Yeah. What I've learned, in the last, I don't know how many years, but, obviously that model that you just said right there, it doesn't make anybody any money.
No.
So I don't know when and if we're ever going to get to that point. But what's frustrating to me is we're never even taught that. Like now people, when I talk to physicians, they'll say, well, but, patients aren't going to do that anyways. And I'm like, well, you got to give them the choice. I mean, that's up to them.
Right.
Most doctors don't even give them the choice when they come in to see me, and I tell them this, and they're like, you're the first doctor that's ever told me that. Some of them had diabetes for 20, 30 years, and they're like, nobody has ever told me, what you just told me, and yeah, it's just it's what I call the sick cycle of medicine, and they just stay in this cycle, and they don't ever get any better because they just keep getting the medications, and then over the years they get sent to a specialist and then another specialist, and so they go see the cardiologist, and the cardiologist is going to put them on a couple medications, and the GI doctor, of course, is going to put them on a PPI, and then they're going to see an endocrinologist, and then they keep and they don't ever get any better, and then if they come to me, they're on this sack full of medications, and I'm like, yeah, so you've been seeing all these doctors, and how do you feel? And they're like, I feel like crap,
Yeah. And it's just the interventional cascade. They're not fixing the problem. And, we see it over and over again. And ultimately, I believe, Dr. Dennis, that when a physician says, well, patients aren't going to do that, I think that's a lazy doctor. That's my personal opinion. I think it's a cop-out. And I do think it's by design that the insurance-based system gives a doctor, 5 or 7 minutes to talk with a patient. And of course, there's no way that diabetic that was a hemoglobin A1C of 14, there's no way in 7 minutes. I don't know how you did it in an insurance-based system, but it's tough to do that in 7 minutes, or almost impossible. And it's by design, because insurance companies and drug companies collude to create a cartel to rip off consumers in the system. Basically, the EMRs, the electronic medical records, are pushed by insurance companies and drug companies to help push more drugs. That's really what they're there for. So it's by design. And I don't know if you follow Dr. Shawn Baker.
Yeah, I've actually had him on my podcast. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had him on our podcast twice. And, he said this, and I believe it. And I quote him because it comes a lot better coming from an actual doctor. But he used some big frank words, and he told doctors, he said, wake the F up, because you're either a drug dealer or you're a healer. You pick. And most doctors are drug dealers. I mean, they really are. They're just drug dealers. They're not healing people like you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I still have friends in the traditional system, and, some of them know that, what they're doing isn't working real well, and they don't care. They're just like, well, I'm making a good living. And then there's others that are just kind of so, kind of brainwashed, in the system, that they just can't see another way. And I always tell people, I don't think they're bad people in the system. Now it's certainly a bad system, but that's just the way they've been taught. And they just can't get out of it. I mean, it's almost like they've been brainwashed, and they can't get out of that tunnel vision. And specialists are the worst, man. It's hard to talk about this kind of stuff with specialists because they are so, just tunnel vision.
Yeah.
A cardiologist, cholesterol bad.
Cholesterol bad. Yeah.
And cholesterol is a complicated issue. I just use that as an example, but it's not quite as bad as what they make it out to be in many cases. But anyway, yeah, it's specialists are tough. And I've since learned, I use diabetes as an example, but gosh, it's so many things. I mean, autoimmune disease. I've actually reversed, not in every case, but I have actually reversed some autoimmune diseases.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly made some drastically improved. And cancer is another great. All they give you is just chemo. I mean, no other options. And nobody talks about the prevention and what are we going to do? I've heard it said that in 2030, which is in 5 years, 1 in 3 people will have cancer in their lifetime. And why aren't we talking about that? And why aren't we talking about, hey, what can we do to make this better and prevent this? I mean, there's, with the Make America Healthy Again, there's a little bit of a movement here, and hopefully that'll kind of catch some steam and draw some awareness. But why haven't we been talking about this more?
Yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic with the MAHA movement. I'm glad it's being talked about, but honestly, to think that the government is going to fix the problem, they caused the problem. I don't think they're going to fix it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's going to come from the bottom up with healthcare professionals like us, educating and empowering patients to take charge of their own health. That's really where it's going to come down from. I got a story about cholesterol. So one of my team members, she works remotely for me. And she texted me today and she says, oh yeah, well, she changed her diet. She lost 80 pounds. She's changing her health, right? Her cholesterol went up from 186 to 200, and they're concerned about it. Her LDL went up too. So instead of the doctor saying, kudos for losing 80 pounds, you have done the best thing to overcome cardiovascular disease, because obesity causes more cardiovascular disease than anything else. They're worried about her cholesterol.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how insane it is. When Shawn Baker, I questioned cholesterol medications before. I questioned pretty much. That was the first thing I started questioning, were the statins and cholesterol. And when Shawn Baker posted his glucose pre-fasting and then 36 hours post-fasting, I don't know if you've seen this of his, but pre-fasting he was like 219. And then he was driving and traveling a lot, not moving or exercising. So he fasted for 36 hours. His cholesterol shot up to 360 or something like that after fasting 36 hours. His whole thing was, it's probably the lipid energy model. This is a theory that we have. This is what's happening. First of all, as well as I do, in the traditional model, if he would have went into a doctor's office with a cholesterol of 360, they would have freaked out and wanted to put him on a statin. a guy that is totally metabolic healthy that just happens to have a high total cholesterol after fasting 36 hours. After that, I realized what a scam the cholesterol thing is. Now, I'm not saying that cholesterol, the lipid panel can't tell you something about metabolic health, especially triglycerides and HDL, but total cholesterol and LDL, they don't mean a lot to me anymore.
Agreed. I think most people miss the forest for the trees in that exactly what you said. They're just looking at the cholesterol, and even in that patient's example, they got healthier, but they can't take their eyes off the numbers on the cholesterol. And it's really, and you mentioned it, and this is what I've learned, over the years, it's about metabolic health. And if you're metabolically healthy, my gosh, you significantly reduce your risk for cardiovascular disease, cancer, all kinds of things. I don't care what the cholesterol is. I mean, you're significantly reducing your risk. And so I think that's what primary care physicians and cardiologists, I mean, really most physicians need to be preaching is metabolic health.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you don't hear that much from my colleagues.
So speaking of metabolic health, so I talk about that all the time also. And that's what's important. I don't even, honestly, I'm not even I don't care that much about glucose. I care more about insulin than glucose. And I'll tell patients that high insulin, you can catch diabetes with insulin before you will glucose sometimes, 10 years before. I've seen people that weigh 800 pounds and they didn't qualify for bariatric surgery because they didn't meet the criteria because they weren't diabetic. If you're 700 pounds, you're diabetic. Your glucose might not show it because your pancreas might still be releasing insulin, but you're diabetic. I mean, seriously, you're at least insulin resistant. Let's say that. And here's the thing is that many times, Sean Baker, again, I'm going to use him as an example. When he first started going carnivore, his glucose averages was like 115. So he was pre-diabetic by those standards. And one of the reasons why is because his body was using he wasn't eating glucose. So his body was making glucose to burn it.
Yeah. And his insulin level was probably 3 or 4.
Exactly. Right. Right. And so when you speak of metabolic health, do you follow Dr. Peter Attia at all?
I do some. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I believe in most everything he says, except he does believe in statins. And, that's something I don't agree with at all. I would never, ever recommend a statin. He believes the 2 best markers for longevity, which usually are good markers for metabolic health, are VO2 max, a high VO2 max, and a high lean body mass. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I would agree with that. Now, I have a small clinic. My goal is to one day have a VO2 max, or to be able to offer that in my clinic. I currently do not. So for me, kind of the poor man's version of that, things that I'm looking at would be an insulin level, which I feel like is very important. Certainly, lean body mass and looking at a lipid panel, but I'm not looking at the total cholesterol and that kind of stuff. I'm looking at the HDL cholesterol, or excuse me, the HDL and the triglycerides, and their ratio. And so when we look at all those things, I feel like we can get a pretty good picture. And in my old clinic, I had a little device that was pretty accurate on checking body fat, muscle, the amount of muscle mass that you have. And so when we look at all that, I think you can get a pretty clear picture of somebody's metabolic health. But I hope to one day be able to get a VO2 max, machine to be able to calculate that. And that way people can work towards improving that. Cause I do feel like that's a really good tool as far as longevity and stuff.
Yeah. So there's a website. I'm going to see if I can find it to estimate VO2 max. And basically it takes your heart rate, your resting heart rate, and your age, VO2 max. And there are some there are some like Apple Watch and stuff. They have ways that they Garmin bike computer. They have ways that they estimate your VO2 max by your heart rate, by testing your heart rate. So there, and I think what's important is I've done the actual VO2 max test and I've used my Garmin as a test. And I think what's important is that, like with any way you measure something, whether it be body fat or whether it be VO2 max, that you stick with one measure and use it as a relative number. I will say whether it be the Garmin or whether it be the physical VO2 max test, they both said the same thing. They were different numbers, but they pretty much said the same thing. So I'm trying to find that website.
That's good that they were pretty close.
Yeah, it was. The numbers were like my Garmin was 66 and VO2 max 66, and the actual VO2 max calculator was on the test was 59. They both basically read the same thing. They were superior. So that's really all that mattered. So there's a VO2 max calculator. It's at omnicalculator.com, and you fill in the numbers, resting heart rate, your age, and it shows. So omnicalculator.com, and it will estimate your VO2 max. I've done one of those before online, and one of the things that's most important, as you can imagine, Greg Dennis, is your resting heart rate. So if you have a low resting heart rate, chances are you probably have a high VO2 max because the stroke volume of your heart is going to be powerful. And so you're going to probably have a good VO2 max. So again, it's an estimate, but it's a good way to estimate. And when you think about these things, and I went to a conference, I learned about VO2 max, although because I'm an endurance athlete, I kind of nerd out on it. But I went to a medical conference where they talked about it. And, you know, to function, to live, you need a VO2 max of 20 and to basically get up and walk. And here's one of the things is that when you think about these things, they make sense. When Peter Attia says a high VO2 max, you know, predicts longevity. If you don't have a good VO2 max, you can't run, you can't walk. If you have a bad enough one, you can't stand up. So it makes total sense that if you have a low VO2 max, you're not going to live much longer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And same thing with lean body mass. If you don't have lean body mass and you're not strong, you know, centuries ago, you would have died. And the same thing with us now. It's just you're going to be bedridden with caretakers. But if you're not strong and you have lean body mass, you can't carry a sack of groceries. Well, how are you going to live if you can't do that? If you're not strong enough, you can't walk either.
Yeah. I don't think muscle is emphasized enough. You know, muscle is really important in longevity, and just exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's a great predictor of longevity. And so I think definitely in the primary care world and in the healthcare world in general, I don't think we emphasize that enough. And of course, unfortunately, as we age, nature kind of works against us, and sarcopenia, which is, you know, the loss of muscle as we age. And so we have to fight against that, and we can. I mean, we can optimize protein, you know, we can do resistance training, and I'm a big fan of hormone optimization for that reason, for the optimization of muscle. If nothing else, I think it has other health benefits, but if nothing else, it helps to maintain that muscle. And so I feel like that's just very overlooked, is the importance of muscle.
So I like to post our comments. We got a comment from Rumble. We're streaming live. Seth Moya, thank you for watching. Thank you guys for having this conversation. It was one of the most important conversations to have in today's unhealthy world. We can turn this ship around with awareness and some hard work. I totally agree. So, Dr. Dennis, what are your goals in the future to help patients work their way to wellness?
I want to keep doing what I'm doing and draw awareness to what we've referred to as the sick model of medicine. And you know, it's getting there. It's slow, but it's getting there. So, you know, I also host a podcast. And so through that and just what I do in day-to-day medicine, you know, I hope to just keep, you know, getting more people that get tired of the sick model and just want to be well. and, want to, and I also, another thing, kind of a goal of mine is, I really want to educate doctors, about, because I think this has to grow at a grassroots level. And, the more doctors that we get on board that are practicing this kind of medicine, then the more people that we're going to get well. Because, I can't do it on my own. You can't do it on your own. There's obviously some people out there, Dr. Baker, but they're still few and far between, and they're certainly not the majority. And so, I really, every chance I get, I try to educate it. Primary care doctors, most of them don't want to hear what I have to say, but I always enjoy when I get the opportunity, kind of debating or just kind of the back and forth of my colleagues. Some people will listen, some won't. Some just kind of roll their eyes at me. But anyway, I would love to just kind of educate and talk about what I've been talking about here to other physicians, just to get them to open their eyes.
Yeah.
Like what happened to me. And I don't know why that happened, but it happened. And once their eyes are open, you can never unsee it.
Exactly.
It's like, how did I not see this sooner? That's what most of them would say. How did I not see this sooner?
Well, and I will say this, it's what you and I do is so rewarding. And I tell you, you could not pay me enough to go back into the sick care system. There is not enough money that would help me make me do that. Just even today, I literally had a patient, and this happens almost daily, say that we saved their life. As you know, with hormone optimization, you can save marriages, you can save people's lives. It's incredible. And when I was in the sick care system, dispensing, cholesterol meds and high blood pressure meds for people, I never got comments like that, because my patients just got sicker. They got another drug. Oh, thank you for another drug. They never said thank you. Actually, it was, nobody ever says thank you for, giving me that statin or for giving me that blood pressure medication. And that's what's so rewarding about what we do, is because patients feel better. They get healthier. It's awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. I absolutely love what I do. There's no way that I could have continued in corporate medicine for my whole career until I retired. But now what I do, it doesn't, I run a business, so there's some things on the back end, but like, other than that, what I do doesn't feel like work. And I could do this for a long, long time, just because it, is so rewarding, as you said.
I love it. So we're streaming your website here. Tell us a little about your website and how somebody can get a hold of you if they have any questions.
You bet. Yeah. So I'm at fitrxwellnessok.com. So I'm a direct primary care office in Tuttle, Oklahoma, which is a little suburb outside of Oklahoma City area. I chose direct primary care. Again, that's where people pay a monthly membership. It's a great model to be able to do all sorts of other things, which I do. I tell people I practice more wellness medicine, but that allows me the time with people. Again, they can be seen as often as they want, and until they get well, and then hopefully they stay well. So yeah, you can find out more information about me at fitrxwellnessok.com. Right now I'm just in Oklahoma. I hope to one day soon be in a couple of other states, and can hopefully help people remotely, doing some virtual visits. And then I also host my own podcast, which is the same name as my clinic, FitRx Health and Wellness Podcast, and it's on Google, Spotify, all of them, and
all platforms. Awesome.
Yep. And I talk about nutrition and longevity and, biohacking and all kind of fun stuff. So.
Awesome. Sounds like fun. So do you refer your patients at all to Surgery Center of Oklahoma?
I do. Yep. Yeah. Great place. Matter of fact, one of the owners is a good friend of mine. So, yep. And fortunately, we don't have too many people requiring a surgery, but that's a great place. It's a cash only surgery and center. And so, yeah, great people there.
I've met Dr. Keith Smith a few times, and we've toured the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, and what a wonderful, wonderful experience it was. And Dr. Smith is, he used to be the only clinic in the nation that was doing that. And he's been gracious enough to basically give away all his secrets of what he did. And now there's clinics like his popping up all over the nation. And it's just so cool to see that. Because about 20 some years ago when he did that is about when we were getting out of insurance in our pharmacy. And I'm like, hey, and he was on Fox News. And I'm like, hey, Janet, here's a doctor that's as crazy as we are, and they're getting out of insurance. And it was very inspiring to us. And so it's just nice to see this cash model of medicine finally succeeding. And it's only going to get bigger because people have seen that insurance is what makes healthcare expensive. Healthcare is not expensive when you pay cash. It's insurance that makes it expensive. And healthcare is very affordable, and you can get better if you pay cash. Your insurance company wants nothing to do with you getting better at all.
Yeah, no doubt. I just had a patient earlier before I got on that was talking about they have regular insurance, and they're like, I pay all this insurance, and then I went to the GI doctor, and they did a scope and all this stuff, and I got a bill for $2,500, and they're like, why do I pay insurance when I still have to pay out $2,500? I'm like, yep, it's pretty worthless.
Right, exactly. And that same scope, as you know, and this is why I love what you guys do in direct primary care, because you guys direct people towards places that they can save money, whether it be imaging or a scope. And for instance, I don't know if you're talking about a colonoscopy or an endoscopy, they're probably going to be about the same price. I don't know that, but we found it out the hard way before we canceled our insurance 15 years ago. We got my wife's colonoscopy covered on her insurance. It was covered all right. $5,000. We paid $3,000. Fast forward 5 years later when we paid cash, $1,100 out the door, and the service was a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I use imaging as an example. I can get an MRI for $300 cash.
Right, that's so cool.
I know, and a lot of people same concept. So insurance will bill $1,500, and then they pay like $500, as their copay, and I'm like, yeah, I could have saved you $200 and completely avoided the insurance and got better service. You're exactly right, and paid less money. So it's such a racket. And labs same way. I mean, we get an 80% discount on labs when they just want to pay cash, and it's incredible.
So check this out. This person commented. They're from Canada, actually. We need more doctors like yourselves up here in Canada. I'll check out your website, as hormone optimization is something that will benefit me, but more specifically my wife with cancer. So thank you for watching and commenting. Yeah, and on that thing of imaging, another thing they would have prevented too is that when they go through their insurance, it takes 2 or 3 months to get prior authorization. Mm-hmm. But when you pay cash, they can get you in the next day.
Yeah.
Or within a week. I mean, maybe not the next day, but within a week, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's what I do with direct primary care. I'm on call 24/7, and that's how I get some people, is because they'll call their doctor, and the receptionist says, well, his next appointment's 3 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now, and they're like, what is that? And they call us, and I mean, we can get them in that day or the next day, or of course we do a lot through text and that kind of thing as well. So
I love it. Well, thank you, Dr. Dennis, for what you're doing. I really appreciate it. You've helped us realize our goal today, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So thank you so much for being on and helping educate us.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday to our regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.